Hi, podcast listener. This is your host with the most, JJ. Have we ever met in person before? I'm pretty handsome, right? Well, you're listening to JJ Meets World, and I hope you enjoy this episode. We're going to talk about Mexican restaurants and comic books. We're going to talk about my new favorite obsession, which is King of the Hill. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Handsome JJ Meets World. And by the way, if you'd like to help support our podcast, visit jjmeetsworld.com where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some killer swag at our merch shop, or click the link to Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star review.
1, 2, 3, 4. J.J. Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. J.J. has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirled as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called J.J. Meets World.
Tucker, on my way to record this episode of JJ Meets World, I had an adventure. And
is that why your hair is all messed up? I just assumed that was bedhead.
No, this is because I had the window rolled down when I came here, and so I've been like real, like, you know, it's a little like all over the place, right? No, what happened to me today was I was on a side street that meets a major intersection, and I'm stopped there waiting at a red light. And then the light in the opposite directions goes from green to red, but mine never turns green.
Okay.
And so then a whole nother cycle goes through, and then like all of a sudden the lanes in the opposite direction are green again. And I'm like, well, that's weird. So I sit there thinking like maybe it just didn't see me. So for whatever reason, I flashed my brights, and I was like, the light will probably understand that there's somebody waiting here now. And so then again, the lights turn from green to yellow to red, and then mine stay red. And I even was like, what the fuck? Like, what's going on here?
You even said, what the fuck? What's going on?
I did,
here?
yeah. And so
Damn.
I waited another cycle, and then the next one I'm like, forget this. I'm going to go. And so I waited, and sure enough, it went red, and then I went. And it's funny because I saw you go by just moments before I was able to go.
Oh, was I one of the beneficiaries of the greens?
Because on the major thoroughfare, green to red is exactly the way it's supposed to go.
Sure.
But mine was not cycling to the green.
Huh.
And I was already in my mind working up the conversation I'd have if I got pulled over, and I'd be like, officer, there clearly was something wrong with the streetlight. And that is the third time in my life that's happened to me, where I've been at a light and it hasn't cycled over to the next color set.
Okay.
And I specifically remember when I was a sophomore in high school, they were remodeling the high school that I went to, and they didn't have everything ready for the first week of school. They were behind in the construction. So I didn't have to go to the first week of my sophomore year of high school. We made it up on Saturdays, and that sucked. But, so I drove my sister to school, her and her friends, because they were at a different junior high. And so I'm sitting at a corner of two intersections, and the light is just not going green. It's just staying in its red state. And this time it was two major thoroughfares combining together. And so finally I was like, forget this. And so I went when it cycled through, and I'm at the front of the line. There's 3 lanes of cars next to me. Nobody's going. It's morning hours, so there's a lot of traffic. And when I finally decide to go, there's a whole slew of cars that follow behind me. And I felt like I was changing the world. I felt like I had done something to improve everyone that day. Now, I don't know when they stopped. You're right, exactly. Like if a volcano had appeared in Fargo, I would have been the one to be like, concrete barriers.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's like you started one of those pay it forwards in a drive-through line.
Yeah.
And you have no idea
who
ended it.
Oh, yeah. It was glorious. I loved every single minute of it. But it was really weird for me to have that experience today, because it does feel like you're breaking the law, and you're knowingly breaking the law, even though it's a mechanical failure.
Yeah, you're also being crushed under the wheels of a cold and merciless system that's like,
Right.
oh, do you want to go somewhere? Well, the light's red right now, buddy.
You're not going anywhere.
The light is red, so that means you don't move. Do you think there's something going on where you have either a generational curse where sometimes you are not recognized by streetlights, or is it a weaker form of vampirism where a vampire isn't reflected by a mirror, but for you it's just from time to time you are invisible to like a red light?
You know, my God, I've never put that much thought into it. I hope it's not vampirism, because that's more or less a disease.
It sounds like classic vampirism to me.
But
Classic
but
vampirism.
here's the thing,
Dracula could never get anywhere in town. That's why he had to turn into a bat,
right? But also,
because the lights don't turn for you
this
if
is
you're
the
a
problem.
vampire.
That if that is the only part of the vampirism that I have, it's very odd. Like nothing about the daylight. I mean, the most important parts of vampirism are not present. It'd be like having chlamydia, but your only side effect is like you sneeze too much.
You certainly age and don't have a thirst for blood. But there's probably something else in there then, something that you crave, that
I haven't turned into a bat yet, to my knowledge. I'm not being tracked by an old man named Van Helsing. I also can't seduce anyone at will.
I've seen you in plenty of churches.
You're right. You have. I can touch holy water.
You're what is known as a daywalker, at least. At minimum, you're a daywalker.
Is that Blade rules?
I think it's vampire rules.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know much
There's
about
a kernel
like,
of
what it
truth
is
in
to
every
be.
myth, JJ.
Is it? Yeah. Do you know how the book Frankenstein was written? Mary Shelley's Frankenstein?
Probably by hand.
Good. Yeah. Clever. Wow. You got real dad energy on that one right there. It's actually a fascinating story. It's Mary Shelley and her author husband, and I can't recall his name, are on vacation. And they're with several other writers, and they decide, let's have a competition, and everyone can write a short story, and like that'll be our thing tonight, right? Everyone, I think Lord Byron was with them too, and so everyone,
it was a vacation of a bunch of fucking nerds, is what you're saying.
I mean, I wouldn't even call them. I would call them like, well-to-do. While the servants are working, we'll like have a dalliance with ink and quill. And so they all go off and they write their little stories, and they come back, and of course everyone thinks that Lord Byron's going to be the one to just crush it, and it'll, why even compete? And Mary Shelley is like, I'm not going to let that pompous jerk steal all the thunder here. And so she comes up with the idea for Frankenstein, and she says, I need one more day. And Lord Byron is like, one more day? How gauche. And so she finishes it, and she writes essentially what becomes, not just the bones, but some of the muscles and skin to the story of Frankenstein. And everyone sits there and they're trying to come up with who's got the scariest story, because they're in an old castle. And she comes up with the story, and everyone is blown away by this. And I think originally she called it like a modern day Prometheus. Yeah. And people are just blown away at this story that she's written about how, like it has so many different types of what's it like, like the themes and things like that, man playing God, and nature's out of our control, and all of these things. And so they're like, you should publish this in a book. And she's like, oh no, that's all right. And they're like, you absolutely should publish this as a book. And have you ever read Frankenstein by any chance? Mm-hmm. It is phenomenal. Yeah, I recently actually just read the actual book. It is so good. Mm-hmm. And it really made me think I should go back and read a lot. Like I should read Bram Stoker's Dracula and like read the actual like texts that a lot of these, famous monsters are based off of.
We should make a film like called Mary Shelley in Love. and it's her coming up with all of the themes for Frankenstein, all of George Lucas in love.
Yeah.
So like
all the things she sees.
like she meets a baker named Frankenstein or something.
His name would be like Frank Nathan Stein. Frankenstein.
He's making bagels.
Yeah. And he's trying to make them with electricity. He's like, I don't want to use ovens anymore. I just wish there was a better way to make a bagel.
Yeah.
Come on.
He's afraid of fire.
What was the last thing? Do you remember the last thing that you read? Was there anything good?
I mean, I've been piecing through the Silmarillion, but it's a slog.
Oh, yeah.
It's tough. So lately,
I hear it reads like a textbook.
Yeah, it is, or even almost like the Bible, right?
Oh boy,
like
yeah.
This person begat that person. I've been reading a lot of comic books lately. Usually one a night. I have a massive to be read pile of comic books, and I went and visited the new Paradox recently.
What'd you think?
It was nice. It's a nice space. I like the fact that they've repurposed the old Mexican village,
which no longer looks like the Mexican. Like there's no similarities whatsoever.
I can't even see the old layout. It is completely revamped. I miss the old Mexican village because I have a lot of nostalgia for it. But
it's funny because I ate at the new Mexican village yesterday and I was like, no, thank you.
Is it no bueno?
You finish yours and then I'll go into mine.
I have thought about it a lot, though, since I went there and realized that as a fan of Cormac books, I am in a very specific era of life in my head where it's like, yeah, that was where it meant something to me more. And so I have a nostalgia for the cramped, like comic shop with just piles of shit everywhere. And this is much more like if the Hodo was a comic shop almost, right? Like it's just new, right? It's not lived in yet. So the more it gets lived in, I think the more of that community vibe it'll have. At the same time, however, I was not there when people were gaming. And I've seen the photos of just table after table of just people having fun playing games. So clearly it's awesome. And it's a vibrant and growing community. So that's cool. But I do miss the old, my old comic book shops are all gone. They're all dead now. None of them exist anymore. And so that's something that I, as a comic book fan, who prefers mostly comics from the 70s, since that's what my dad gave me. So, but it was cool. It was fun. And I'm going to go back.
My analysis is they haven't had enough time to collect stuff in their new space to adorn like the walls and things like that. You know, like I want a Deadpool figurine hanging from the ceiling. I want, like there's a lot of stuff that they'll be able to add to this.
Yeah. If they could make it homier, maybe cozier in some way would be fun. Now, what is the deal with, I know it's co-owned with Orange Records, right?
So what they did is they split the building in half.
Okay.
And so half of it is being rented by Paradox and half of it's being rented by Orange Records.
Okay.
If either one of them vacated, it could be another shop of some kind that goes into that space.
Is there like an actual dividing wall then? Because I just looked like I was just in Paradox.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a dividing wall.
I haven't even gone yet.
I think that you'll be able to enter to like each store independently. Like you don't have to walk through one to get to the other or anything like that.
Got it. Okay.
My wife and I have a giant stack of gift cards. And I recently told Jill
that you were given or that you are going to distribute.
No, that we were given. Like over the years, we've amassed, someone gives us a gift or someone does this. And not that we're not about using gift cards. It's mainly I forget. And so then we have the discussion like, what do you want for dinner? I don't know. What do you want for dinner? And I said, well, this conversation is going to be ended immediately because what we're going to have for dinner from now on is going to be, what do we have a gift card for? And some of them are like we have a place, there's like a Mediterranean place called Toddy's that I've heard good things about. Toddy's Mediterranean Saveur.
I haven't even heard of that.
Yeah, it's been around for like 2 years now.
Where is it?
I don't know. But like,
is it still here?
Yeah, it's still here. Okay. Yeah. And I hear good things about it.
Okay.
And so we have a gift card for that. And so tonight, that's what we're going to do is go to Toddy's. But we had a Mexican Village gift card. I was a Mexican Village OG kind of guy. I mean, that's where we had our groom's dinner, right? Which is a horrible choice, like looking back on it. But I said, we're going to go do this. So we walk into the new Mexican village. And for those of you listening outside of the metro area, what you need to understand is the Mexican village was the place that people went to for Mexican food from like a whole different era. Mm-hmm. I see you looking at this. Well, you got a problem with it?
I'm just making sure that we're still rolling.
Yeah, it's still rolling. I see my counter.
It's the engineer in me.
Yeah. So we go to the new Mexican village and we walk in and there's a woman behind the hostess desk that goes, how many? And we said 2. And she goes, are you all right sitting in the bar? And we said, okay, sure. And she goes, seat yourself. And so I was like, okay. And then so we're walking in and she goes, wait. And so we turn around and she takes 2 menus and she's not going to come out from behind the host stand. She's like, here. So then we have to walk back and I grab the menus and she goes, someone will be with you in a little bit. And I'm like, okay. So we walk in there and there's 6 tables seated at the time. And I go, okay. So there's 6 tables. We sit down and in the booth behind us, you can tell how they're just not cleaning it because the booth is very high. So it's like the booth ends above where your head is. Uh-huh. And it's fabric and there's a thick line of dust and like dust bunnies at where like it meets the wood part of it. Just disgusting and gross. And so I'm like, oh, okay. So we sit there and we arrive at 1:15, so it's after the quote-unquote lunch hour, but it's a Sunday. We sit there, nobody comes out. This waitress isn't even like helping the other tables that are there. 1:20, nobody there. 1:25, nobody there. And so I told Jill, if she's not here by 1:30, we're just going to get up and leave. You know, there's no point in us just sitting around and waiting for this person to appear, because if it's taking her 15 minutes to get to us, there's no way we're going to get good service. Right. So I kid you not, at 1:29, she comes out and she walks over to a booth across from us, talks to another booth, talks to a guy at a table, talks to these women behind us, and then comes to our table. And she's taken an order from everybody, right? Like this guy at the table's like, I'll have 2 beef tacos and, a cheese enchilada. And these other people are like, I could use a refill on this drink. And da-da-da. So by the time she gets to us, she goes, okay, what do you want? And I said, well, I'll start with a Diet Coke. And she's like, uh-huh. And what do you want off the menu? And so we place our lunch order. And so she disappears. Now she comes back after this and has to go to each table individually and ask them, what was it that you wanted? And so she comes to us and she's like, okay, so, and looks at Jill and like, so you wanted the beef enchilada? And she goes, nope. And she places her and she looks at me and she goes, you wanted the pollo fundido? And I said, nope, I want this. And she's like, oh, right. So she leaves and then she comes back and she throws chips at us, 2 things of salsa or like 2 things of hot sauce, and then takes off. And I was like, you know what? She's here all by herself in the bar area. But that's the thing. I heard the hostess then the next time with like 2 other people came in and she's like, how many? And she's like 2. And she's like, oh, was the bar okay? And they're like, actually, we'd like to sit somewhere else. Only the bar's open right now. And so this hostess, who should now be in here helping run drinks or something like that, if you're not seating the rest of the restaurant, this is your job now. Meanwhile, they take a fork and roll it up in a single paper napkin and put a green little sticky thing to like keep it shut. And I'm like, what's the point? Just put a cup with friggin' forks out here. Uh-huh. This busy work that you're making someone do to put a fork in there to not trust me to use a knife. Uh-huh. And also, what does it say about your food that like everything is soft enough that you can use a fork to cut it? Like there's nothing on our menu that's going to require a knife. So Jane is the server's name. I don't know. I just make that up, right? So Jane
to protect the innocent.
Yeah, right. So Jane comes back, and my cup is empty, and she goes, "Oh, I'll get you a refill." And then she brings the meals, and then after the meals, she gets a refill. I did not get what I ordered. I got a pollo fundido. which is not, it's not the worst thing in the world, because like I've eaten the pollo fundido. It's like a chicken burrito essentially. Like it's a flour tortilla and with ground chicken in it. Then they deep fat fry that real quick and they put a jalapeno cream cheese on top of it.
They're tasty.
Yeah.
That's not what you ordered.
But it's not what I wanted. It's not what I was looking for.
She checked with you a second time.
She did, right? That's the thing. Is like she had a chance to make it right.
Was she not writing anything down?
No, didn't write a thing down.
First mistake.
Right. And like to take multiple table order. And I'm wondering, like, did another table order the pollo fundido and they're disappointed by their chicken finger basket? You know, like, and I didn't ask for the pollo fingers. I asked for the chicken fingers. So we end up getting, like, we get our meals and I'm just like, you know what? Let's just eat this and be done with it. And again, don't forget, we're there solely because I have a gift card. I don't even know how much is on this gift card, which comes in a minute. So I eat about a third of it and I'm like, you know what? This is just not what I'm looking for. And it's all like, my plate, I feel like, is just slop. I feel like it's prison food. Like every movie you've ever seen where they serve someone food in prison or a fat camp. Yeah. Like this is the slop.
There's a reason they don't show you the kitchen staff at a restaurant.
Right. Exactly.
There's a reason they're back there.
Right. Oh, 100%. And also somebody was telling me that they were a line cook for a week at a Mexican village. And they're like, yeah, it's just all microwaves. It's just a sea of microwaves. Yep. And that's fine because I bring my food hot and like, I don't care that you microwave it, but I really would have liked the food that I ordered. Yeah. That's just all I wanted in this situation.
It's not that you microwaved it. It's that you didn't microwave the food I asked you for.
Jill had ordered a small side of queso for our chips, like at the beginning. So she brings a side of queso and our chip basket is empty. And then she doesn't refill it for a while. So we're sitting there looking at the cheese skin over. And so by the time it's time to like dig into it, so it's not a situation where we're really having like the best, best interaction. It's not
going your way.
And I decided like, let's just be done with this. So she doesn't bring us our check, but what she does bring are 2 to-go containers and puts them down on our table. And I'm like, oh, lady, I'm not taking this with me. Like, I don't care about my body very often, but I'm not going to reheat this in a styrofoam container. Yeah. Like, thanks, but no thanks. So she finally comes back and I've got the gift card and my credit card. And I'm like, here, let me give you this. She's like, oh, well, where's your check? And I said, well, you haven't brought us the check. Oh, no, I definitely did. And I'm like, no, you didn't. There's no check here. And she's like, oh, okay. Oh, they must have printed it up front then. Go, why? Why up front? Shouldn't they have printed it at your kiosk at the bar? We're sitting in the bar. So she finally gets around to swinging over with the stuff and she goes, here you go. And she hands me the gift card and she's like, there's $20 on this and I used it. But then she hands me the gift card back and I'm like, why? Yeah. It's a dead gift card. It's like handing me an empty like basket with no bread in it and being like, here you go, here's the basket. So this is the thing that pissed me off the most. For 2 drinks, a small side of queso. And when I say small side, it's in the same container that like the hot sauce comes in. Okay. So you can visualize that, I assume, right? Yep. And then I got a pollo fundido and Jill got it was like a taco and a cheese enchilada meal. Okay. With the gift card, the $20 gift card taken off, our total was still $31. And I was like, this lunch cost us $51. That is insane. Before tip. So I left what I felt was an appropriate tip, and it was not you did a horrible service. I left a tip that I'm like, okay, everyone has bad days.
The societal acceptable bare minimum.
Yes. I mean, it was 20% of the total before the gift card, which even now like makes my head spin. Yeah. So even with a gift card, it costs us $41 to have a meal where no one paid attention to us. I didn't get the food that I ordered. And I know that this sounds like I'm just complaining, But I have also stopped using food delivery services unless the store itself delivers it. So, for example, I'd order a Domino's pizza because Domino's delivers it.
Yep.
I would never order Space Aliens because Space Aliens doesn't deliver it. And if you're a frequent listener of this podcast, you know that I have sworn off some restaurants based on how they treat the food delivery service. And I've decided that the restaurants in this town need to take responsibility for how for everything, right?
Yep.
I mean, this restaurant was filthy. The service was horrible. The food was subpar at best. And that's me giving, like, I know it comes out of a microwave, right? And I just think to myself, people get so sad that places can't survive. It's because they're allowing it to be so subpar. And I was with Jill. I was like, if I worked this place, I guarantee you, having never been a server for more than an hour in my life, I could whip this place into shape, no sweat. Mm-hmm. At least for a week, I could, get this. And the thing is like, I watch people who put in the minimal effort because they're like, tips here are garbage, right?
Right.
Well, your tip is a garbage because you're not putting in the effort required for it. Right. Also, do you want to hear something that I think is scandalous?
All the time.
This is an unpopular opinion.
Uh-oh.
I don't know why people think that they shouldn't be tipped or they shouldn't pay taxes on tipped wages. I mean, I'm of the opinion that I pay taxes on all of the money that I earn. And I already know that if you're like a server and you've been a server for a long time, you already skirt the system. I've known plenty of servers who declare much less than they take in. And so I don't know why you don't think that you should be paying taxes on your tips. The rest of us do. Now, I'm a firm believer that you should be paid at the very base minimum wage per hour that you're there. I don't know how the government allows that to keep skirting by, but if you're an Uber driver, if you are a server and you make money, you should pay taxes on that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I use every possible situation. That's why I use a tax accountant so that they know, oh, these are programs that you can utilize to lessen your tax burden. Mm-hmm. But like, how roads get to be a thing, right? Like, like your taxes pay for that. And if you're ultra rich, if you're a billionaire listening to this right now, shame on you. Shame, 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 because it's a drop in the bucket to you, but for the little guys, it really means a big difference. And I was thinking about that because we're in an election cycle right now where they're making all these promises about how life is going to be better for everybody.
This is where you always hear, the populist claims from both sides,
right? Yeah. And doesn't that bother you sometimes? Like, I know you're telling me what I want to hear. Honestly, it's like, listen. I am going to end up sleeping with one of you, right? You don't need to impress me by showing off your muscles at the bar or, going over and, fonzing the jukebox and getting it to play something. Like, one of you is getting my vote. Yeah. And you don't need to lie to me. What you need to do is to tell me this is what I want to do. Mm-hmm. I was watching a speech recently, and in the speech is someone who's running for governor of a state, and they're talking about how they're like the world will be a better place, and I'm going to do this, and and you deserve this. And it's like, I do deserve that, but I don't think that you can accomplish that goal. Mm-hmm. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what to tell you other than,
why don't you run for something?
Oh, I would be bad at it, and I don't want to.
Are you sure? Maybe you'd be an outsider. You could drain the swamp.
I just don't buy that notion of outsider. Yeah. I don't think that exists. I think it's a myth. I think a lot of things. I guess that I won't bore you by going down the rabbit hole of them. I don't know how to remove the perverse incentives that are in our economic system. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to make an unfair system more fair. I see the steps we seem to take are always very short term. Like, let's just patch this for now until we can have the political capital to do something. So I don't know. It needs to come from the ground up. I guess it never really does come from the top down. They're sort of the last ones to get on board with any idea, but I just don't know. Like, it feels sometimes to me like yeah, we're having these conversations, but we should have had them 50 years ago and fixed it then because we're just fucked now.
Yeah. Right. It's you think of like now. It's your actions today affect the future in such, drastic ways. And so like, I think about like when I can't remember the name of the act, but I'm pretty sure Eisenhower put it through. And it was an infrastructure act where they essentially created jobs by doing things like building bridges. And
the interstate system, I think, was from.
You're right. It was a part of that thing. And the idea behind it was sort of like, we'll create jobs by giving states and counties what they need. So for example, the interstate system, and they say, gosh, is it shitty that you have to drive 60 miles to cross this river, at this point, or we'll put a bridge in the middle. And people got to work and they built buildings. Like that's where a bunch of the like armory buildings that are across the country that, became just kind of civil service places. Mm-hmm. I loved that. There's something about that. I've also been watching a lot of King of the Hill lately, and I was having a conversation with previous guest Dave Brunsvold last night about how when King of the Hill was on TV, I didn't care for it. Okay. And it came on after The Simpsons on Sunday night. Simpsons was like your lead-in for it. And I didn't like it. I was like, this is kind of, I don't get this humor, and it, it looks weird, and it's such a slow burn. Going back to it in my 40s, it is so sweet. It's going to give me diabetes.
Right. I remember at first thinking this is such a weird tonal shift from Beavis and Butthead.
Right.
Right. Which don't share the same universe. They are not even a multiverse.
Yeah,
they are just
everyone thinks it's Hank Hill. That's like the neighbor down the street.
It's the same voice.
Not, yeah.
He's doing the same voice, but it's still Mike Judge. Mm-hmm. I know. Did Primus do the opening song for that?
I believe
they did that and South Park. Yeah. Then that's a pretty stellar record.
And they're both great.
They're both bangers.
I was watching an episode where, so if you're not familiar with the show, it starts off, it's the Hill family, Hank, who sells propane and propane accessories, his wife Peggy, who's a substitute teacher, and their son Bobby, who's a quirky, weird, chubby little guy. And then their niece, Luann, lives with them because Luann's parents got into a fight and her mom stabbed her dad with a fork and they knocked their trailer over, and then the police arrested both of them, so she needed a place to stay. Right? So... So Luann's with it, and Luann doesn't see problems with like walking into the kitchen in just like a towel, and Hank is there in like his underpants, and he's very conservative
because it's his niece.
It's Peggy's niece. To my understanding, right? Like, yeah.
Okay, I think so too.
And like Hank's dad during World War II got his shins shot off in the Pacific, so he's the same height as their son, and so he goes, and when I woke up, they'd attach my feet to my knees, and his name's Cotton Hill. Anyway, I'm watching an episode where Luann is going back to move back into this trailer that they've untipped over, and she's sad about it because there's so many bad memories, and she likes living with the Hills, but Hank wants his space back. He wants his den back. And so Hank like winches the trailer and like flips it back on its regular side.
That's the whole issue, is that it's on its side.
Right, exactly. So he gets it back up, and so Peggy, Hank's wife, and Luann are going to like set her up, and Peggy and Hank have this fight about how Luann, doesn't want to go. He's like, why? There's no excuse anymore. Like, that's where she lives. This is where we live. And she's like, your niece is expressing to you how much she doesn't want to go back to there, and she's got tears in her eyes, and she's like, Hank, I can't believe you don't have any emotion. He goes, I have plenty of emotions. I worried she wouldn't go back there. I feared I'd never get my den back, and I'm concerned that you haven't left yet. And so they get it, Peggy and her husband Hank get into this fight, and he goes, well, why don't you just go to hell? And they leave, and like an hour later, Bobby and Hank are watching TV, and there's a tornado watch that's been going on the last couple of days. And they're like, there's a tornado, and it was spotted heading towards this trailer park. And they said it's leaving a path of destruction that can only be described as a living hell. And Bobby's like, hey, you told Mom to go to hell, and now you sent her to the place that's literally going to become hell. And Hank realizes he can't let the last thing that he said to his wife be go to hell. And I mean, there's something that wouldn't resonate to me when I was 16 watching that, but there is something as a 41-year-old resonating with me, being like
saying that to your partner.
And words hurt, right? Yeah. Like words hurt. And I've had situations now where I've had friends who've died, and the last thing I said to them was something that I wish hadn't been the last thing I said to them, right? Mm-hmm. So Hank takes off to get to this trailer park, and his truck dies in front of a Megalomart, which is sort of the villain of the series. It's a gigantic, like, Walmart type store. And so he goes, oh, it's that damn fuel filter. So they go in, and Bobby's saying, like, well, why don't we go into Megalomart? They've got everything, probably fruit pies. And so they go in there, and Hank finds, and because there's a storm, like, everyone's, buying stuff in a hurry because people do that, even here, like, during a storm. And so they only have one package of fuel filters, and it's 12 fuel filters. And he's like, but I only need one fuel filter, but, like, I have to buy it in bulk. So he goes up to the front and he puts a single fuel filter down, and he goes, one fuel filter, please. And she goes, sorry, hun, those are sold in packs of 12. And he goes, and so he puts it back in the package. He goes, sorry, hun, I can't sell you that. The package has been opened. He goes, but I opened it. It was me. And she goes, insurance purposes. Meanwhile, somebody else in line goes, that guy's buying all the fuel filters. And it's such a moment that I'm like, I understand what that is now. I went to Costco once, and there was a restaurant that must not have been able to get its supply of eggs. And so they clearly sell a lot of breakfast. And I know a lot of restaurants do this. They'll go to a place like Costco or Sam's Club and get things that maybe weren't, sourced right away, or if they ran out before their next delivery, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I know a lot of, like, the Asian restaurants will go and get fresh produce rather than keeping something for like a week at a time. And so they were buying the pallet of eggs that were in the back, and people lost their minds. They're like, oh, what are we supposed to do? What do we do? All those eggs?
What is this, COVID or something?
What are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to? And I want to be like, there's plenty of grocery stores. You may not be able to get 5 dozen eggs.
You live in 21st century America in the upper Midwest.
Right. He's coming to buy these things because he literally needs that many eggs. Mm-hmm. So I guess what I'm ultimately trying to say here, if I had to boil it down to anything, is if you get caught behind a red light, be that person who buys all the eggs.
That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help us continue to produce new episodes each week, visit jjmeetsworld.com, where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some swag at the merch shop, or follow our link to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all the sites the cool kids are using these days. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by visiting moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, check out linebenders.com, where you can find direct contact info for JJ or booking information.
I think the saddest thing about King of the Hill is I can't watch an episode without thinking Brittany Murphy's dead.